Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Welcome. Improve communication, unlocking the secret to no more arguing. Episode 113. The United States has the third highest divorce rate in the world. And now more than ever, couples need guidance for navigating conflict wisely and skillfully. Hearing what someone has to say is integral in communication, particularly when talking through a conflict. Being able to really listen and take in another person's perspective can be the difference between resolving an argument or making it worse. Good listening means hearing them out without judgment, being curious instead of critical. Curiosity keeps the door open. Criticalness slams the door shut. That's one of my favorite things to carry on about. I'm going to repeat this because it's that important. Curiosity keeps the door open and criticalness slams the door shut. In episode 107, I addressed the importance of conflict and embracing disagreement because it keeps the differences between the two of you honest. Otherwise, silent, swallowed differences build into resentments that are layered over time, which turn into explosions. Today, we are going to be thoughtful about how to be more respectful and make more room for different points of view, which prevents the futility of arguments without problem solving. Listen to others and trying to understand their points of view is the key for successful communication. Instead of lashing out, try using more constructive language that doesn't just attack the other person's opinion, but rather encourages dialogue in order to reach an understanding. Compromise can be seen as a chance at resolution instead of a sign of surrender, all that black-white attitude. Both sides should make allowances if they want any kind of grudges or feelings avoided afterwards. Being able to effectively compromise while keeping your own beliefs intact creates trust between two people who may have been arguing before due to misunderstandings about each other's opinions. Being an effective listener isn't just taking time out from our own thoughts and views. It's also focusing on understanding where the other person stands, which can be all important for managing conflict. This helps create trust between two people who are at odds with each other due to a disagreement or misunderstanding. When both sides feel heard, they are more likely willing to compromise. A 2022 YouGov survey of 1,000 people found that many couples, 39%, argue about tone of voice or attitude, followed by money, then child-rearing practices, communication styles, household chores, and relationships with family. There are so many things we can all find to argue about. 30% say they argue once a week, 8% every day. So clearly, this is an important topic we can all benefit from. Today's guests are Linda and Charlie Bloom, best-selling authors and acclaimed psychotherapists and relationship counselors who have curated a straightforward approach to help improve the relationships in our lives. Their new book, An End to Arguing, 101 Valuable Lessons for All Relationships, was published in February of this year. Bloomwork.com is their website where you can learn more. My very first question, and I'm so glad you're here, is what can we all do to reduce our defensiveness, which adds fuel to arguing longer and uglier?
Thank you for the wonderful question. And I would say people need to slow down. Listen well. work with their own reactivity when they get triggered, that it's bringing up fear, it's bringing up aggravation, it's bringing up anger, it's bringing up sadness. Sometimes there can be strong feelings when it's a relationship that's important to us, and they can trigger us. And it's very important to hang on to ourselves and not act out what we're feeling. Note what we're feeling. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel frightened. It's okay to feel hurt. But to pause to reflect about a positive response, a response that is going to invite more communication and connection and not alienate the other person and cause distance, which is very painful when it's a relationship that's important to us.
Absolutely, I would agree with you. So, if they want to reduce that reactivity, what would your advice be besides pausing? Is there a second step?
Oh, good question. Yeah. And I also want to thank you for inviting us onto your show. Not only is there a second step, but there's a third step too. and believe it or not, more after that. But that first step is the most important one, which is the recognition that we have a problem. And the key word in that is we, not you. And so as we begin that process, we want to invite the other person to join us, not tell them that they need to join us, not focus on what they're doing wrong, but to really hold a position of responsibility here. That I am not the, I am a responsible agent in the situation in which we find ourselves. So just framing it as a relational situation as opposed to a victim and perpetrator situation where, you're the problem and you're making me feel this way or you're doing this. And that's really what needs to happen. And it happens not so much outwardly, but it happens inwardly, where I don't even enter into the conversation until I have at least some sense, small though it may be, that I too have contributed to where we are now. It doesn't mean that it's either black and white thinking like it's either your fault or it's my fault. But we have co-created this situation which isn't working for me. It seems like it's not working all that well for you. And can I invite you into a conversation in which we might be able, I'm not saying that our relationship is terrible. I'm just saying that, hey, it could be better. I don't think that you would argue with that either. Can you join me in a conversation in which we can perhaps bring some higher well-being for both of us into this relationship? So to make it an inviting invitation, not a blaming one, not an angry one.
And I always like what David Schnark said, that relationships are a people growing machine. And we want to have more character. We want to be a better person. And I'm saying to my clients just yesterday, that's what real love is. It's the work of being a better person and looking at yourself, not just pointing the finger at the other person.
Exactly.
And I think that we and the us, sometimes when I have somebody really, really difficult, I will say to them, okay, are you willing to take 15%? I'm trying to wiggle them towards, claiming something, because it's so comforting to just blame, and feel like you're not contributing. And it's not true. It's a false illusion.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some effective communication techniques to prevent arguments from escalating or from just getting stuck in a pattern of repeating the same things over and over, that loop people get into?
I am always encouraging our students, our clients, and our readership to ask more questions. Because asking questions tends to open up communication. And there is usually so much more going on below the surface. You know, the metaphor of the iceberg, only a little bit shows above the surface of the water, and there's all this other stuff that's going on. And if we ask ourselves questions about why am I experiencing such intense emotion about that, that's a profound question to live in. But to also ask our partner, it seems like something that I said triggered you. Would you be willing to share with me what got activated in you when I said that? I didn't mean any harm. But even though my intentions were good, I think I hurt or upset you. These kinds of questions tend to lead to a gold mine of understanding, not necessarily agreement, but understanding is a lot. I think it's often underestimated how profoundly important understanding is. That when people feel understood, that the other person gets why they're tender in this area, why they have a strong preference for this, that, or the other thing, then I think the connection is really strengthened, the trust is deepened, and the relationship lifts up into the thrive zone. And I think that people often are making too many demands and commands, and it's off-putting to the other person, and they don't bring what you opened up the whole session with that curiosity and wonder, which is so healing. When people bring their curiosity and wonder to the communication, people feel valued by that. And if it's really sincere, that can open up a whole dimension that may not have been explored thoroughly enough.
I really like your distinction between it's not about agreement, it's about understanding. And so the goal is understanding, and that if you enter a conversation with that feeling instead of I gotta win or you have to agree with me, that can change the whole tenor of the conversation.
Exactly.
Very nice. I like that. Are there specific personality types that are more prone to arguing, and how can they learn to manage it better?
Yeah, the type that's most prone to arguing is the type called human beings. And you know, when we use the word arguing, what we're referring to is a particular kind of a process that most of us are familiar with, where there's a different set of perspectives. We're each looking at this from our own perspective, and they're not congruent with each other. And we each have taken on the challenge of trying to get the other person over to my side to agree with me. And that, as we know, never ends well. Because it's cyclical. And so one person attempts to coerce in their own way. It could be through aggression, it could be intimidation, it could be withdrawal, it could be some other form of manipulation. And then the other person counteracts. They counter with their form of coercion. And that just goes on. And of course, it doesn't get better. The feelings get more intense. And either, there's an explosion at some point, or else one person just gives up, gives in, whatever, have it your way. But of course, as you know, as we all know, that doesn't end it. Mm-hmm. You might, the actual argument might stop. Where do the feelings go? They don't just disappear. They go underground. And what happens is that there's this residue of incompletions that keep coming up, fueling future interactions. Now, I know that, just to get back to your question, I know I was being a little bit sarcastic.
No, that was great. That was great.
But we humans do seem to be programmed to have certain feelings when our desires are met with resistance. And those feelings can be fear, it can be anger, it can be pain, a lot of things. So it's really not so much a matter of how do I get this other person to agree with me, but what is it that I'm experiencing right now in response to their reaction to me? Am I feeling threatened? Am I feeling hurt? Am I feeling concerned? I mean, what is it that's there? And what do I need to communicate right now in order for me to get to be able to stay open? Because right now, this trigger that just activated me is preventing me from even really hearing them now. Now I'm in a defensive mode, and when I'm in a defensive mode, it's really difficult for me to hear the other person because I'm too busy trying to protect myself from them. Mm-hmm. So to really check in, okay, wow, you just said that. Here's what I felt when you said it. And I need to take a breath for a second because, I'm really feeling activated. And I want to hear what you're saying. But right now, I just need to let you know, this is where I am. And that's not only for their benefit, but it's for my benefit too. So I can show up again because I'm gone. Mm-hmm. I'm possessed with anger, with fear, with whatever. And it doesn't take much to come back though, if I'm willing to really acknowledge it to myself, accept it, and let them know. Now, if they can't accept that, if they make me wrong for that, then we're spiraling down again. So hopefully I can express it in a way that isn't going to activate them. But sometimes, no matter how skilled we are in saying something responsibly, the other person can still get reactive and defensive. Mm-hmm. So that's where we get into what we're referring to as those ongoing cyclical arguments. And the reason that they don't stop is because neither person is willing to do the one thing that's necessary for it to stop, and that is to get vulnerable. To really check in, let them know, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's going on with me, giving them that information. And most people will respond with some degree. They'll cool down a little bit, just feeling your vulnerability. But it's not easy to do because we've all accumulated a whole laundry list over the years and decades of defenses against revealing vulnerability. All of us have. We've all got our versions of how to do it. But that's the short answer to the question of how do we break the defensive cycle? You get vulnerable.
I totally am with Charlie about the vulnerability is the way to break the cycle. But I would like to pick up that thread of the personality type just to add to what he said. Mm-hmm. In the Buddhist philosophy, they speak about the weak suits, that there are 4 personality types that you have to beware of the weakness. There's delusion type, greed, fear, and anger. And the anger type personality has more work to do than the greed, fear, and delusion. Because their initial response to things, and I think this is just born right in people with their personalities, is no resistance and a tendency to want to fight. So they have that personality type. It just means that they have more work to do to file down that rough edge. The fear types, of course, they are likely to become avoidant about discussing the tough issues because they're so afraid of so many things and they're afraid of conflict. So they too have a lot of work to do to become conscious combatants, to grow some courage to be able to get into the fray and mix it up and experience some discomfort and so forth. The delusion types sometimes don't even realize what's going on, that there can be a lot of trouble and they're in la la land, everything's fine, do you know? And they need to wake up and smell the roses or, smell the rotting things to really face the issues. And so every personality type has plenty of work to do to become masterful in dealing with differences successfully. But I think the anger types have more work to do.
And what about the greed?
The greeds, they sometimes are grasping. Do you know? They're wanting to take, and they can sometimes disadvantage other people in their greed. That they need to cultivate generosity of spirit so that they're really playing fair and they're not grasping and grabbing and holding things for themselves. So each one has a little bit different work to do, but big surprise, we all have work to do. It's just the anger types have more filing down their rough edges to hold on to themselves so that they don't act the anger out.
It's a really interesting paradigm that I actually have not heard before. And I just think that's really interesting. And what Charlie was talking about, I was thinking that being vulnerable requires a lot of uncertainty. And people don't like uncertainty. We're all a little addicted to our point of view is right, and we like the certainty of it. So I like both of what you both said. Thank you so much. 19% say they use the silent treatment most of the time. 41% say some of the time they use it. What can you do when the person you are arguing with doesn't want to talk and walks away?
People who do that are operating under the illusion, who use the silent treatment, that form of defensiveness is not as painful or harmful as it is when somebody raises their voice and yells. No. It can, for many people, be far more painful to be shut out, because what it does is it activates feelings that could be long buried of abandonment that many of us have, when somebody we needed wasn't there for us when and in the way that we needed them. So when somebody just goes silent, we call that the violence of silence. When they go silent like that and they disengage without even clarifying what they're doing, saying, I need to take a break here, doing it in a responsible way. When they just shut down and just disengage wordlessly, that can be one of the most painful reactions that a person can experience if they're in the receiving end of that. So what can a person do? They can, if the other person has not physically left, if they just say something like, well, I'm done here, I'm out of here. And the other person is left feeling like, well, wait a minute, we just opened up this huge can of worms and you're going to leave me here without even trying to get to some understanding here. We don't have to fix this whole thing but can we at least get to, but the other person's already decided, I'm gone. I don't want to take any more of this from you. Then what we encourage people to do is say something like, okay, I get it, but before you leave, can I just ask you one thing? Can I just ask you one thing? And then the person usually says, okay, what? And can we resume this conversation at another time when we're both cooled down? And it's important to say we are both, not when you're, ready to talk, but when we are both in a better position. Can you agree to that? So you don't fight them about leaving. You don't make them wrong for leaving. You accept, okay, they're maxed out. They can't handle anymore right now. All right. But you make it overt. You let them, okay, I get it. And then you try to negotiate a time when we can come back, hopefully in the not too distant future. Like hopefully, maybe in an hour or two or later on that day, or, maybe if it's got to be the next day, but, certainly no more than 24 hours. And just to, and 95% of the time when people come back together after having given themselves a break, they will be in a much more balanced state of mind.
I want to add to what Charlie's saying. I'm totally with everything he's saying. And I just want to add that the research is very clear that the silent treatment, 80% of the people who use it are male. And they have investigated that to see why men do it more. And there actually is a physiological explanation for it. They're slower to emotionally arouse to anger. But once they hit those high levels of anger, it's harder for them than women to drop down to a place where they can actually communicate effectively. And so I try to help the women in my caseload to realize that there is a protective mechanism going on there, that some part of him knows he's going to say something or do something he's sorry for. So he's leaving the conversation to take care of himself and calm down.
Also, in some, could possibly be to protect her from what he anticipates is the rage that's going to come out of him.
Yeah, that he could
can't
throw
control.
something, that he could slap her.
You don't want
punch
to push
her.
me because I could be really mean here.
If they reframe it as he's protecting me from
Himself.
his intense anger, that he's fearful that he can't manage, and that's a good thing, and it's not a problem that he takes a break. It's only a problem if we don't have an agreement in place that we're going to resume after we've calmed down after the break and bring up the subject again and take as many breaks as we need to get some kind of completion and understanding on the difficult topic.
And I'm always saying that old myth that don't go to bed angry is ridiculous, because people need to feel more together when they're really trying to have a real conversation. Dumping out your emotions and being crappy to each other is not a hard thing to do. But
in fact, the most kind thing to do is to just agree that we're going to let it rest until we're rested ourselves.
In a better place,
And we're going to be more effective, to have a successful communication after we've gotten some sleep. I think it's a good idea, if you do have bandwidth, to try to get to a more peaceful place before you go to sleep, but it's not always possible. In fact, we recommend to people that after they've worked all day, they've given, to the kids and given to their careers, and all they have is scraps left over, don't even try to have a meaningful conversation at the end of the day. But designate some time when you are going to be rested and at your best to deal with these very important issues.
I agree. One of the things I've talked to people about is trying to carve out a little bit of weekend time where you're not quite as tired or weary. And I think having those inner resources would help reduce the arguing. Are there any other things about de-escalating that you want to toss into the conversation that we haven't covered?
I am a big advocate of taking deep breaths. When people really tune into their body, how tight they're getting, that their belly's tight, that their chest is tight, they may be clenching their fists, they may be clenching their jaw, that if they have some kind of a relaxation process, and people who meditate know that they need to calm themselves down, that I'm a fan of talking meditation. Do you know that while you're interacting with the other person, you're slowing down the speed with which you're sending your information and receiving your information and really taking it in? And by taking deep breaths and pausing in between the ideas that are being exchanged, I feel like there's an opportunity to really be with the information and notice what's going on in your body if you're tightening up so that you can calm yourself. And when your whole body is calm, the chances that only your reptilian brain is working, that lizard brain that only knows fight or flight or freeze, that is going to settle down too, so that your neocortex is working, where you have all these creative possibilities, where you can remember the things that you've read in the books and heard in the workshops and learned in your therapy to actually use them. But you need your neocortex, the really highest functioning part of the brain. And to be at your best, you have to be somewhat calm.
You referenced three specific words that should never be used in an argument. What are they, and why are they so destructive?
Well, what we're referring to is actually a phrase of three specific words, and that phrase is "you're being defensive." And if they weren't being defensive before they heard you say that, they definitely will be now. That's the quickest way to put somebody on the defense. Is to make that accusation. And, we hear people doing it all the time. I guess they have some misguided idea that by accusing them of defensiveness, then that person is going to get vulnerable. It generally doesn't work that way. Usually has the opposite effect. But the chances are very good that if you find yourself saying that, or if your partner says that to you, while it may be true that that person may be being defensive, it's not going to bring about your desired outcome. It will only take you further away from it. So it's important, to be clear about, and this is what we think is one of the most important, if not the most important, starting place in any kind of a conversation or discussion or argument, is to be clear about what your intention is. So at the very beginning, maybe even before you actually start the dialogue, to be clear about, well, what is it that I want to have happen to yourself? To be clear about, this is what I want to have happen out of this conversation. I want us to be able to understand each other better. I want us to be able to find some common ground where we can both stand rather than pointing the fingers of blame at each other. I want us to experience something, whatever that might be. And also we encourage people to actually state that intention at the very beginning of the invitation to a conversation. And this is why, do you have a few minutes to talk right now? There's a couple of things I want to run by you. Is this a good time? And if the person says, yeah, well, okay, how much time do you need? Well, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, whatever. So if you get to the point of where, there's some agreement, some buy-in on it, then you can, thank them for, oh, great, I'm glad you can do this, because I really, here's what I want to address, and here's why it's important. Here's why this is something that I really want to discuss with you. Here's my intention. My intention is for us to blank, and then you describe whatever experience you want us to have by the end of the conversation.
I like the encouragement and intention. Those are important words. I really like that.
And in addition to the beginning of the conversation, it's great to start off on a strong foot like that. You may have to go back to it a few times. And so I give people a starter kit and say, make it your own. You know, when you feel that the other person's being defensive, in our first book, 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married, there's a one-liner with a little story. If your partner's being defensive, you're likely to have something to do with that. So look at yourself. Look at yourself. And when you get your attention off of them and back to yourself, you're likely to come back to your attention. Your intention. I really want to understand why it is that you see it the way you see it. I really want to be closer to you. You know, my intention is for us to get through this. My intention is for us to learn together. This difference that we have is growth waiting to happen. Do you know, to strike out on something positive rather than shaming and blaming and making them bad and wrong.
Yes, I love the constructive energy. It's not just positive; it's constructive. And I think
That's
that's
right.
really, really a great mindset. Thank you. What is committed listening, and how does it differ from general listening during a discussion?
Committed listening is so essential to be a high functioning couple. All the exemplary couples that we've interviewed, a lot of them, we collect stories from, we call them the blue ribbon couples. Sometimes we call them the Olympic athletes of marriage and committed partnership. They all practice committed listening. They do not have screens on when they're having their conversation. They don't answer the phone. They don't take a text or send a text. They don't have the TV on. Their laptops and their tablets are all closed. They really show up. They look into each other's eyes. Sometimes they hold hands. Sometimes their knees are touching. They're fully present. I sometimes use the image of having all your pores open. Do you know that you're so receptive and that you really bring that curiosity and wonder and that commitment to learn and understand together, and you are paying keen attention not just to the words but the tone, to the facial expression, to the body language. That's how present and how much you're showing up. And when we tend to really show up, it invites our partner to also show up too. And if we speak in an offhanded way and we're talking about something that's important while we're emptying the dishwasher and we're distracted by other things, we're less likely to have a meaningful conversation with a successful outcome.
Yes. What steps do you recommend for repairing trust when it's been broken?
Well, first step is always the acknowledgement that trust has been damaged. And that's a step that a lot of people know is true, but they have some difficulty actually communicating this recognition of this fact, you know. So the first thing is to recognize that trust has been damaged, at least on your side of things. One person might feel that they've been betrayed in some way, or that the other person has done something to violate a spoken or unspoken agreement that they have. And then to let the other person know and to see whether they feel the same way. They don't have to feel the same way. They might feel like, well, I don't have any problem with it. But it is important that both people know that at least one person has a problem with the trust. And then there has to be some kind of communication about whether or not there is a mutual commitment to address this problem. Because if one person has a trust problem, the relationship has a trust problem. They don't have to both agree. I mean, one person might say, well, that didn't bother me. Well, it bothers me. And I am not willing to continue to act as though this is okay the way it is, because it's not right now. And and I think most people who are in the relationship business recognize that the fundamental foundation of any good relationship is trust. And no matter what else you're doing, if the trust foundation isn't in place, the other stuff isn't going to make a bit of difference in terms of the relationship. So, whatever else might be working, that's fine, except if you don't have trust, it's like there's a hole in the bucket and all the water is draining out. So there's got to be this recognition of it. And then an agreement that either now or some other point, it's really important to me that we address this and we repair this broken trust, because it's keeping me up at night, or I'm not willing to tolerate it. I don't know about you, but I can't continue without feeling like we are making our best effort to fix this. And we may not be able to repair it in one conversation. Or it might take 2. It might take 10. I don't know. But I am committed. And I hope you can join me, because I can't do it alone.
I'd like to add that the 2 biggest tools in the toolbox for repairing, and all the greatest couples that we know are champions of repair, and they use apology and forgiveness. If you're sincerely contrite about the way in which you harmed the other person with a broken agreement, do you know that you take responsibility for it and you make a sincere apology? Has to be timed well, because the other person may be busy defending themselves. They may not be ready to hear it, and they may not be ready to forgive even once they can receive your apology. So the timing needs to take place. But what I feel is equally important to the apology and the forgiveness is what I have learned out of this breakdown. And I will demonstrate to you that I have really learned from this, so that the trust can not only be restored to the pre-breach level of trust, but even more so. And some people don't even have that concept in their mind, that trust, when it's damaged, can be fully repaired and then some, because of the time and attention and the conversations that were required for the repair to take place. And we've been in the field for more than 40 years, so we've worked with a lot of people who have had serious breaches of trust, not just affairs, investing the family fortune in a business that went bust because they didn't know what the hell they were doing with a bad business deal, different kinds of betrayals. And the people have recovered because their commitment to recovery has been strong. So we're absolutely of the mind that transformation lives, and people can have terrible things happen to them and be resilient and courageous and become wise out of the difficulties that they go through. But a lot of people don't have that concept in their mind, that it's workable. And so that's sometimes the hardest part when we work with people, is just be open to the possibility. Give it your best shot. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it will. Give it some time. Give it some time and attention and work it and see where it goes.
Are there questions we should ask ourselves when deciding whether to stay or leave a situation? I thought that would be a good question to end with.
The question that I think always needs to be asked of ourselves and answered when we're at a crossroads like that, having to make a decision like that, or feeling like we have to, is have I really, truly given this my very best shot? Have I done everything that I know I need to be doing in order to make this decision, so that if I do make the decision to leave, I will not leave with any regrets about, I wish I had done this, or I knew that that was something that would have helped, but I didn't do it. I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to have excessive guilt. I might have some regrets, I might have some guilt, but I don't want to have any more than, is just natural when a relationship ends, if it does. So, giving it my best shot means I have not only done everything that I thought needed to be done, but I have gone out of my way to find out more about what can be done in situations like this. I've done my research. I've gotten my therapy, if that's been important. I've spoken to people who know more about these things than I do. I've really done my best, and I still feel like I just don't have any more juice to keep giving it anymore. I feel complete with my efforts. So that's I think the most important question, and to be really honest with yourself, to know that I am holding myself to the same expectations and standard that I'm holding my partner to.
That's right.
Have I been willing to give them everything that I am expecting from them, and I've really given it all, then not only is it okay for me to leave, but I need to leave. That's the responsible thing, because if I don't, then I'm betraying myself to stay in a relationship where I feel there's no possibility.
I've actually called it a second betrayal when I've had people where somebody had an affair and then just left with that person. And I'll say it's really two betrayals, because one's with the other person, but one is that they didn't try to fix the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Linda and Charlie, please remind my audience of your book title and where they can get more information.
It's called An End to Arguing. It's a big promise. And there are 101 valuable lessons for all relationships, not just romantic partnerships, but parent-child relationships, on the job, and with our friends and neighbors. It's practical. There's 101 little short chapters. You can choose the ones that are of interest to you. And if people go to our website, there's a button to push that'll take them to Amazon, and that's one click away. We also have 4 other books that are also on our website, and there's some free books to download, some very valuable supports to grow great relationships, blogs, our YouTube channel. So there's all kinds of free things on our site. And if people sign up for our newsletter, they get a booster shot of inspiration once a month.
That's great. If you're hearing this message, you listened to the entire episode. And for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. My children's book is on sale on Amazon, Dancing with Your Lizard Brain.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.